The champagne glasses clinked on screen while I lay in a hospital bed, stitches fresh, alone. The post read, "To new beginnings dizzy, tagged at a rooftop bar I had once booked for our anniversary." In the photo, Claire's hand rested gently on his chest. His smile was clean, proud, rehearsed. I remember blinking twice, hoping it was a hallucination brought on by the anesthesia. It wasn't. He hadn't shown up for the surgery. No text, no call. Just silence, and now this celebration. The 4 beeped softly beside me while the toast glowed on my phone like a wound. I locked the screen. Not to unsee it, but to bury it. Until I was ready to make it unforgettable, the nurse had asked earlier, "Is your husband on his way?" I had nodded, swallowing shame, hoping. He always came through. Or so I believed. But night fell. My name was the only one called for visiting hours. The bed next to me filled, emptied, refilled. Still no Daniel. No Claire. Even the hospital flowers were from a coworker. He hadn't sent a single petal. I lied to the nurse again. "Flight delay," I said. What delayed him was a rooftop and a woman I once called sister. My gown was soaked in silent sweat and disbelief. My body ached, but not as much as the silence. The silence said everything: "You're not the priority. You're no longer needed." The toast photo had 217 likes in 14 minutes. I counted. Among them, his mother, his partner at the firm, even my old college roommate. He had made it public. He wanted it seen. He was rewriting the story while I was still bleeding from the last chapter. I wasn't tagged. My name wasn't mentioned. But the venue was familiar. I had chosen it 3 years ago for his promotion. I remembered the way I had called every vendor, picked the exact champagne, the music. That night, he had raised a glass to me. To Olivia, the woman behind everything. Now, that same rooftop held my erasure. Claire wore the same gold bracelet I had gifted her for her 35th birthday. I remembered thinking, she wouldn't dare. But she did. The painkillers dulled my stomach, but not my instincts. That picture wasn't just a betrayal. It was a message: stay gone. No explanation, no confrontation, just replacement. He wasn't hiding. He was presenting a cleaner version of himself to the world. One without my illness, my loyalty, my history. I wasn't a woman anymore. I was a chapter. And he had closed the book mid-sentence. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how carefully orchestrated it all felt. The timing of the post. The silence before it. The symbolism. He waited for me to be unconscious, vulnerable, unreachable. So I couldn't answer, couldn't ruin his image with my truth. Claire had always said, "He deserves more celebration." Now she was the confetti. And I was the cleanup. I looked at the ceiling tiles and counted them to stay calm. 6 rows, 8 across. White, sterile, indifferent. They reminded me of our bedroom after he stopped touching me. Everything clean. Everything cold. I remembered the last time he said, "I love you," 2 months ago, distracted, eyes on his phone. I had whispered it back like a habit, not a belief. I didn't know I was already talking to a ghost. I asked the nurse to draw the curtains. Even though I was alone. I wanted the illusion of privacy, some dignity in the aftermath. But the light still leaked in through the edges. Just like her. Claire was always in the corners. Always in my shadow. Now she had stepped into the spotlight with my life as her stage. She didn't just take him. She took the script I helped him write. And he let her read it out loud. The silence was no longer empty, it was crowded with all the things he didn't say. No goodbye. No warning. Just absence, weaponized. I reread the caption again. To new beginnings dizzy. New. Like I never existed. New. Like my 10 years were just clutter to be cleared. But beginnings don't erase truths. They just hide them, until someone brings the lights back on. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I asked the nurse for a pen. She handed me a clipboard instead. I began to write, not a letter to him, but a note to myself. A record. A memory. Because if they wanted a clean version, I'd give them the whole truth. Every glittering, bloody, broken truth, wrapped in silence. I stayed awake the entire night. Not from pain, but from purpose. Each breath I took felt like stitching my identity back, one thread at a time. He thought he ended me in silence. But silence has a voice. And mine had just started to speak. Not in words. In actions. When the nurse returned, she looked surprised. "You're up already?" she asked. "I have things to do," I said quietly. She smiled politely, not understanding the weight of my calm. Claire had posted a toast. Daniel had vanished. But I had just woken up, for real this time. We met at a bookstore. It sounds cliché, but we reached for the same novel, East of Eden. He smiled first, made a joke about fate. I laughed because he seemed so sure of things. Daniel was sharp, magnetic, the kind of man who made decisions with certainty. Back then, I admired that. I had always second-guessed myself. He didn't. We talked for 2 hours, standing between fiction and biography. He walked me to my car, asked for coffee the next morning, and I said yes. I didn't know then that I'd spend a decade chasing his certainty. He proposed a year later with a speech that made everyone cry, including my mother. He said I was the anchor, the fire, the reason he'd stopped running. I believed him. Not because he was convincing, but because I needed to. Back then, love was believing someone even when the facts weren't all there yet. Our wedding was small, elegant. My dress was simple, but his eyes said everything. We danced to Ella Fitzgerald. He whispered lyrics in my ear like secrets. Everyone said we looked meant to be. I thought so too. In the early years, he brought me coffee every morning. He'd leave notes on the mirror, "You make life better." He'd kiss my forehead before leaving, always with a smile. Our apartment was tiny, filled with books, cheap wine, shared dreams. He'd stay up late coding while I edited manuscripts beside him. We built everything slowly, side by side, hand in hand. Back then, silence was comfort, not punishment. I supported him through the first 2 failed startups. I used my savings to help cover rent during the dry years. I said no to a promotion so I could work remotely while he traveled for pitches. He always said, "When I make it, it'll be our win." That line kept me going longer than I should have. He meant it at the time. I truly believe he did. But time changes meanings. Especially when power enters the room. When his company finally took off, we moved into a house with too many mirrors. Everything became curated, our lives, our furniture, even our weekends. He changed his wardrobe, his smile, his words. I tried to keep up. He said we were leveling up. But it felt more like erasing. I missed the bookstore man. The one who didn't care about optics. He used to read The Sun Also Rises in bed. Now it was business reports. I still brought him coffee. He stopped saying thank you. We stopped laughing during breakfast. He started taking calls during dinner. And slowly, the notes on the mirror disappeared. I started writing them myself. Pretending they were from him. "You're still beautiful. You're still enough." Sometimes I believed them. Mostly, I just needed to see the words. When my health started declining, he told me not to worry him until we had real answers. I said it might be serious. He said, "Don't be dramatic." Claire was the one who drove me to the first specialist. She said Daniel was probably just scared. I wanted to believe her. She always had the right words at the right time. He always had a meeting at the wrong time. I started hiding the pain. He started hiding everything else. Claire and I had been friends since college. She knew our story, our patterns, our quiet corners. She helped me plan his 40th birthday, made the playlist herself. She called us her favorite couple. She said we were a team. I didn't see the rehearsals behind her compliments. Not yet. He used to tell me everything, every deal, every worry, every win. Then he started saying, "It's just work stuff, nothing interesting." But his nights got later. His clothes got sharper. And his eyes, once so full of focus, drifted. During conversations. I told myself it was stress. Men change under pressure. But this wasn't change. It was extraction. He was slowly removing me, quietly, politely, completely. We stopped having anniversaries. The last gift he gave me was a home espresso machine. No note. No card. Just a receipt left inside the box. He said he thought I'd like it. I did. But it wasn't from him. It was from obligation. From routine. I missed the bookstore. I missed being looked at. Every time I brought up the distance, he said, "Why do you always look for problems?" I started saying less. It made things quieter, easier. We learned how to perform for others, smiles at dinners, small touches in public. But inside, we were actors in different scenes. Claire kept showing up. Always helpful, always present. She once told me, "You two are lucky. I've never had a love like yours." Now I understand what she meant. We had dinner with her 2 weeks before my surgery. She brought dessert. He poured the wine. I noticed their laughter overlapped more than usual. She complimented his haircut. He blushed. I told myself I was being sensitive. I excused myself early with a headache. Neither of them followed me. Out. He stopped calling me, babe. He started calling me by my name, Olivia, like a colleague. There was no anger. Just vacancy. I kept trying to refill the space between us. But you can't water dead roots. And I was pouring everything I had left into a man already walking away. The night before my surgery, I asked him, "Will you be there when I wake up?" He said, "Of course." But didn't look up from his screen. I nodded. I told him I was scared. He didn't answer right away. Then, "You'll be fine." I watched him walk into his office and close the door. I didn't sleep. But I still believed. The first time he forgot our anniversary, he blamed a conference in Seattle. He sent flowers 2 days late, no card, no call. Claire brought over wine and said, "Men are just wired differently." I laughed with her, but it stayed lodged in my chest like a splinter. He had never forgotten before, not even small dates like the day we met. I told myself we were just busy. But busy doesn't erase love. It buries it. He began traveling more, always last minute, always alone. His explanations were vague, always ending in "don't overthink." I stopped asking details. Not because I trusted him more, but because I didn't want to hear him lie. One night, I found a hotel receipt in his coat pocket from a city he never mentioned. He said it was a mistake, from months ago, babe. But the date was last week. And he hadn't called me once while he was gone. That was the first time I didn't believe him, and didn't say it. He changed his phone password without telling me. When I asked, he said, "Company policy. Security updates." But when I picked up his phone to hand it to him, he grabbed it too fast. Not angrily. Just defensively. Claire said, "You have to give him space. Trust is everything." I wondered later why she was always the one defending him. Now I know that he stopped touching me at night. At first, I thought it was stress. Then I thought it was me. I bought new lingerie, booked a weekend away, alone, because he had meetings. He texted during that trip, "Hope you're relaxing." No call. No visit. No effort. Just hope. From a distance. He criticized my cooking, gently, but consistently. He started bringing home takeout from places Claire liked. She once joked, "You should let me cook for you both sometime." I smiled. She already was. In pieces, in comments, in presence. I started feeling like a guest in my own marriage. Like I was always slightly off script. He began forgetting stories we lived together. He once told a group that he went skydiving with a friend. It was me. I laughed to remind him. He blinked. "Oh, right. You were there." I was always there. That was the point. But somehow, in his mind, I was being edited out. Claire laughed at his version. "You must have had so many adventures." "Yes. With me." "Before you." He stopped saying we. It became, I think, my team, my house. Even though the mortgage was still in both our names. I remember once saying, "We should get away this winter." He replied, "You should. You've been tired lately." I waited for him to realize what he'd said. He didn't. Because it wasn't a slip. It was a separation. I told him once, "I feel like you're not here even when you are." He looked at me, paused, and said, "Maybe we've changed." Just that. No denial. No reassurance. I nodded and walked away. Because what else do you do when your husband confirms the drift? Not angrily. Not cruelly. Just plainly. Like it was weather. Not a decision. He stopped noticing small things. Haircuts. My perfume. The way I started crying in my sleep. He didn't ask why I sat in the dark kitchen for hours some nights. He just stepped over me to grab a water bottle. Claire, on the other hand, always noticed. She'd text, "Are you okay? You seem distant." As if she wasn't part of the distance. He started arriving late to family events. At my nephew's birthday, he missed the cake. At Thanksgiving, he forgot the cranberry sauce I asked for, the one my mother loves. When I said, "You forgot again," he shrugged. "I have a lot on my plate, Liv." I wanted to scream, "So do I." But I didn't. I never did. Claire came to my doctor's appointment when he said he couldn't get out of a lunch. She held my hand when they scheduled the surgery. She said, "At least you have me." I remember how her voice sounded, soft, supportive, and rehearsed. She hugged me like someone claiming something. I felt the shift then, but didn't name it. I thought I was being paranoid. She started referring to our house as home. "I'll meet you at home," she'd text him. Once, I saw the notification. He said it was a typo. She means her place. But when I asked, why would she call our house that? He laughed. "You're being ridiculous." He didn't even get mad. He just dismissed it. Like my intuition was a gnat buzzing in his ear. He once said, "You'd be lost without me." Not cruelly. Just as a fact. We were in the kitchen. I had just told him I was afraid about the surgery. He said it like reassurance. But it landed like a sentence. Because deep down, I knew he believed it. And I had started to believe it, too. That was my red flag. My betrayal of myself. The day before the surgery, I found a new scarf in our guest bathroom. It was Claire's. Monogrammed. She said she must have left it at dinner. But she hadn't come inside. I placed it on our bed. He didn't ask about it. Just moved it aside to sit down. Like it belonged. Like she did. My name was still on the mailbox. But it felt like I had already moved out. Of his mind. Of his heart. Of his life. He stayed just enough to look married. Said just enough to avoid questions. Loved just enough to keep me from leaving first. But the door had been closing behind me for months. The morning of my surgery, he kissed my forehead without looking me in the eye. Text me when you're out, he said, checking his phone. I asked, you'll be there, right? He nodded, distracted. Claire had messaged him. I saw the notification light up. Her name didn't surprise me. The smile he gave after reading it did. That was the last time I saw him before they rolled me away. I closed my eyes pretending that nod was a promise. When I woke up, it was 6:47 p.m. The room was cold, dim, sterile. No flowers. No voice saying my name. The nurse smiled gently. Any family on their way? I nodded. She walked away, politely believing my lie. I checked my phone. No messages from Daniel. No missed calls. No notifications. Just the quiet confirmation of absence. I stared at the ceiling until the tiles blurred. Claire hadn't texted either. The woman who used to check on me after a dentist appointment had vanished. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when I opened Instagram. There it was, Daniel. Claire. Rooftop. Toasting. He was tagged. She captioned it, surround yourself with who sees you. I had never been more invisible. My fingers trembled, not from the four, but from humiliation. The post had comments, laughing emojis, heart eyes. You two deserve this. Deserve what? The silence? The replacement? Her hand was on his chest like a trophy. His ring finger was bare. Ours had matching bands. I hadn't taken mine off in years. I checked. Mine was still there. His had disappeared, quietly, like him. I clicked her profile. New photos appeared. A weekend getaway, captioned, finally peace. One shot showed him asleep on a porch chair. I recognized the cabin. It was the one we almost booked for our anniversary, before he said he had work. So he didn't cancel. He just changed the guest list. He gave her my weekend, my wine, my view. I felt sick, but not from the anesthesia. The pain in my abdomen was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. They didn't just forget me. They showcased my erasure. I was in a hospital gown while she wore my life. The nurse came in again. Anyone we should call? I whispered, no. He knows. She paused, then nodded softly. She understood without asking. He didn't text that night. Or the next morning. Claire sent a generic, hope recovery's going well, 2 hearts, 2 days later. Like we hadn't just shared 15 years of birthdays, breakups, secrets. Like she wasn't drinking from the same wine glasses I once chose for our wedding registry. She called me love. I stared at the word. It felt like a knife dipped in honey. He returned home 3 days later. I was already there, bandaged. Sitting in silence. He walked in without guilt, just his usual tired charm. Work ran late. You're okay, though, right? I didn't respond. I wanted to see what lie came next. He looked at the table, noticed the untouched dinner. Did Claire stop by? He asked. That's when I knew he wasn't sorry. He was managing. Managing an image, a life, a betrayal. He sat across from me and sighed. We haven't been happy for a long time, Liv. He said it like a doctor delivering a diagnosis he had rehearsed. I said nothing. I didn't argue. Silence was heavier than words. He talked for 15 minutes. I didn't hear most of it. Something about confusion, emotional distance, needing clarity. He didn't mention the rooftop. Or the photo. Or the ring. He said he never meant to hurt me. The only thing worse than cruelty is cowardice dressed as kindness. He stood to leave. I'll give you space. I nodded once. He didn't. See the envelope on the table. That night, I opened my laptop. I pulled every shared account. Every email. Every receipt. I didn't cry. I cataloged. The pain sharpened into precision. He thought I would break. But what I broke was our illusion. And I saved every fragment. 3 days later, I returned to Instagram. The photo was gone. Deleted. But not forgotten. Screenshots don't disappear. He tried to erase the proof. But I had already begun the archive. Not for revenge. For memory. For record. For justice. Claire messaged again, let's talk when you're up to it. I stared at the screen. Then blocked her without replying. Some silences are not passive. They are weapons. Mine was loaded with evidence. And timed out. I wore his hoodie to the doctor's follow-up. The nurse said, he's not with you today either? I smiled. No, he's busy. Again. She nodded slowly. She remembered me. I wasn't just a patient. I was a woman they all noticed, alone. I left the clinic with my coat buttoned and my spine straight. He thought he left me at my weakest. But he miscalculated. I took the ring off that night. Left it on the bathroom sink, next to his cologne. It stayed there for 5 days. Just like him. Never where I needed. But always leaving a trace. That's when I stopped waiting. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. Instead, I folded laundry in silence, while the house echoed with absence. The bed was made, the dishes washed, the ring untouched on the sink. But something inside me was shattering, quietly, relentlessly. Grief doesn't always sound like sobbing. Sometimes, it's folding his socks one last time. I kept moving so I wouldn't collapse. Stillness would have made the truth too loud. I sat in the closet for hours one night, surrounded by his suits. The scent of him clung to the fabric like a haunting. That cologne I bought last Christmas now made me nauseous. I found a cufflink I had gifted him during his first investor meeting. It was loose, almost forgotten, like me. I held it in my palm until my hand went numb. I didn't cry. I just stared. My appetite vanished. The fridge became a gallery of uneaten intentions. Takeout containers multiplied like echoes of dinners we never shared. I drank tea in silence, counting seconds between sips to feel time pass. Every room in the house felt colder, wider, emptier. Like his absence rearranged the walls. Even the plants started wilting, like they knew. Claire's scarf was still in the guest room. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Sleep was strange. I either couldn't find it, or drowned in it too deeply. Dreams of him, before Claire, before the distance, taunted me. I woke up with wet cheeks I didn't remember crying into. The sheet smelled like a man who left. I stopped making the bed. It didn't deserve order anymore. I left the windows closed, afraid the truth would blow everything over. My silence became my armor. My body healed slower than expected. Not from the surgery, but from the abandonment. The doctors called it normal stress response. But I knew the real reason. My soul had been amputated. Every pill I swallowed reminded me of the promise he broke. He wasn't there when I needed him most. That emptiness had a temperature. And I felt it every day. I replayed the rooftop photo like a horror scene. Her bracelet. His hand. My replacement. I imagined the moment before the picture, what they said, how they laughed. Did he think of me? Did he hesitate? Or had he already rewritten our story with her as the ending? The caption, "To New Beginnings." I wanted to scream, "I'm not dead yet," but I didn't scream. I wrote. Page after page. Memory after memory. Not a journal. A record. A map of my erasure. If they were going to erase me publicly, I would remember myself privately. Every lie, every absence, every disappearing act, I wrote it all. It didn't heal me. But it gave shape to the pain. I stopped responding to his texts. They came like clockwork, just enough to look responsible. Need anything? Doctors say you're okay? As if he hadn't toasted to freedom while I was unconscious. As if kindness could backspace betrayal. I never answered. Silence became my punctuation. Claire emailed me once. A long, hollow message about not planning this, about feelings getting confusing. She said she missed me. She called our friendship one of the most meaningful parts of her life. I read it once. Then deleted it. If it had been meaningful, she wouldn't have stolen what was mine while I was broken. I didn't reply. She didn't deserve a reply. I started disappearing from places we shared. The wine bar we loved. The bookstore. Even the grocery store aisle with his favorite cereal. Every place held a version of us that no longer existed. I couldn't mourn in public. So I vanished in silence. That's the thing about grief, it doesn't beg to be seen. It waits for you to stop pretending. I canceled all plans. Stopped answering friends who didn't know what to say. Even my family sensed something and tiptoed around my sadness. I let them. I needed the quiet. Because in that quiet, I was rebuilding myself. Grief turned into blueprint. Pain turned into clarity. I sat in the shower one evening until the water went cold. Not because I was sad. But because I wanted to feel something real. Everything else felt artificial, like my marriage. He said he loved me. Then left me alone with my healing body and broken trust. The cold reminded me I was still here. Still breathing. Still capable of rising. Eventually, the first time I laughed again, it startled me. A movie, a stupid line, and suddenly there it was. Not loud. Not strong. But real. It felt like rebellion. As if joy had been smuggled back into my chest, quietly. That's when I knew, I wasn't broken. I was cracked. And cracks let in light. I looked at myself in the mirror for the first time in weeks. Pale, thinner, different. But still me. I touched my scar, then smiled, softly, not sadly. They wanted to erase me. But I was still here. Still standing. And I was just getting started. It started with a shared drive we both forgot I had access to. He never revoked my email from the early days of his company. It was buried deep, under folders named Q4 Reports and Investor Decks. Inside one subfolder labeled Archive. I found her name, Claire_Bennett.jpg. Photos. Dozens. Some in public, some not. One was dated 3 days before my surgery, her in a robe at the lake cabin. The timestamp was enough. But I kept looking, there were invoices for weekends I never knew happened. Payments to boutique hotels, a dinner in Aspen, spa appointments in both their names. Everything itemized, everything paid with our joint card, later reimbursed through his company. He had hidden indulgence behind spreadsheets. He used business to fund betrayal. I opened the statements, highlighted every line. The math of deception, cold, calculated, precise, then came the texts. I knew the iCloud password. He hadn't changed it since year 2. A quiet loyalty to laziness, maybe. Or arrogance. There they were, messages to Claire, weeks before my surgery. Let's wait until after. Once she's stable, we'll figure it out. Like I was a project to postpone. He sent her photos from inside our home. One of my scarf draped on a chair, captioned, "She still hasn't noticed." Another, a selfie in our kitchen, her hand holding a glass of wine, my wine. I felt my breath catch. Not because of the betrayal. But because of the disrespect. It wasn't just an affair. It was theater. And I had been the quiet audience. He forwarded Claire our dinner calendar. The nights she has book club. She replied with heart emojis. They didn't just betray me. They studied me. Tracked my patterns, my appointments, my silences. They used my predictability to build their fantasy. And still called it love. I found a voice memo. 38 seconds long. His voice. Hers, laughing faintly. He said, "She's too tired to fight anymore." That sentence froze me. Not because it was cruel, because it was true. I had been too tired. Too silent. And they counted on that. In the same folder, I found a PDF contract. His signature. Claire's. Elise. For an apartment downtown, move-in date 1 month after my surgery. He had planned it before I even went under. He wasn't indecisive. He was strategic. He gave me silence so her life could begin uninterrupted. But I had just found the noise. I printed everything. Labeled each folder with dates. Highlighted keywords. I didn't do it for revenge, I did it for memory. Because I knew there would be a day I'd be asked why we ended. And I wanted the truth to speak when I couldn't. No yelling. No guessing. Just facts. He wrote his confession in spreadsheets. I called a lawyer the next morning. She read the lease and the shared expenses and said, "He's already left. Legally, emotionally." She told me what was mine. What he thought I'd never claim. The cabin? My name was still on the purchase. The investment account? I had power of attorney, still active. He forgot I had helped build everything. And I never forget where my name belongs. I checked the company records. I was still listed as silent partner. He never removed me. He thought I wouldn't notice. But silence is not absence. It's positioning. And I was finally stepping forward. With proof in hand. I scheduled a meeting at his firm. Didn't tell him. Just walked in with a folder and a smile. The receptionist blinked twice. She remembered. Me. "Tell Daniel Olivia's here," I said. He came out, casual, until he saw the papers. I said nothing. Just handed him the envelope. His face cracked, just slightly, inside, the cabin deed, the receipts, the lease, the messages. No explanation. No threats. Just truth, collated and clean. I watched him scan the first page. Then I turned and walked away. He didn't follow. He knew exactly what it was. Not a goodbye. A statement. That night, he texted, "Can we talk?" I let it sit unread. Then I forwarded everything to my lawyer. Every photo. Every message. Every contract. She replied with one line, "You just won your silence." I closed the laptop. And finally slept. The next morning, I opened the windows. Let the light back in. Made coffee, just 1 cup. No ring on my hand. But documents on my desk. He had taken my voice. Now, I had taken his illusion. I didn't tell anyone what I found, not at first. I wanted the truth to speak at the perfect volume. Loud enough to echo. Quiet enough to cut. Silence is sharp when you hold it with intention. So I waited. I planned. I smiled when I needed to. Because vengeance doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it signs documents. The firm's holiday gala was scheduled for mid-December. I still had my RSVP. Claire had helped me pick the dress months before. I wore it anyway. Black silk, sharp neckline, quiet power. When I walked in, people paused. I hadn't been seen in weeks. They thought I'd disappeared. But I was never gone. I was gathering. And tonight, I arrived full. Daniel was mid-conversation when he saw me. His face twitched, a flash of panic behind polished charm. Claire wasn't beside him. She hadn't been invited. The firm had a policy, no personal guests without clearance. And after what I'd sent HR anonymously, her name was on a quiet list. Not blacklisted. Just benched. For now that I greeted people kindly, never mentioning what I knew. They complimented my poise, my dress, my presence. Daniel tried to approach me twice. I moved with perfect timing, always just out of reach. No anger. Just grace. Because when someone tries to erase you, your presence is the loudest revenge. Later that week, the board met privately. I had emailed them 3 documents: proof of unethical conduct, commingling of personal and business expenses, and misuse of travel accounts. All signed by Daniel. All corroborated by timestamps. I never used my name. But they knew exactly who sent them. The next quarter, he was asked to step back temporarily. Publicly? Stress leave. Internally? Reputation recovery, Claire posted. A photo weeks later, just a coffee cup and a quote: "Some people can't handle strong women." Only 2 likes. No comments. I didn't respond. I just watched her engagement dwindle, her invitations dry up. She wasn't a villain. She was just forgotten. That was always her greatest fear. Now it was her address, the cabin? Listed under my name now. I changed the locks. Booked a solo weekend with wine and silence. I burned the robe she left behind, quietly. In the fireplace. Watched the smoke rise without blinking. Ashes don't lie. They just end things. I met with my financial advisor next. He was stunned I waited so long to separate the accounts. I didn't want money, I said. I wanted clarity. He nodded. Helped me transfer my shares discreetly. Now, I owned 22% of Daniel's success. Not for power. For remembrance. I wrote a single post online, a photo of my hand, scar visible, no ring. Captioned, "Healing quietly. But completely." It reached more people than Claire's toast ever did. Messages poured in: support, sorrow, solidarity. I replied to none. Silence is the new statement. I donated to the clinic where I recovered. Anonymously, but I wrote one line on the card: "To the women rebuilding from absence." They framed it in the hallway. Daniel walked by it once during a check-in. He didn't know it was mine. But he paused anyway. My lawyer finalized everything. The following month. Divorce filed. Assets separated. No court battle. He didn't fight it. He didn't want more noise. I left with what was mine. No apologies. No explanations. Just freedom, folded neatly in an envelope. Claire sent one last email: "You're colder than I thought." I didn't reply. But I whispered to myself, finally. Because warmth was wasted on people who used it to burn me. Let her shiver now. Let him sweat. I was no longer on fire, I was made of ice. Daniel still texts on holidays. "Thinking of you. Hope you're okay." I leave them unread. His voice doesn't hold weight anymore. Only echoes. And I don't echo back. I never needed to. I moved out of the house quietly. No tracks. No drama. Just boxes, labeled with care. I left the ring in a velvet pouch on his desk. Next to it, a single photo, our wedding day. Torn cleanly in half. My side missing. His, intact. Let him wonder where I went. Let him live with the space I no longer filled. The new apartment is smaller, quieter, mine. Sunlight pours in without asking who it belongs to. I painted the walls a soft blue, the color of becoming. No portraits. No shadows. Just breath and books. I sleep in the middle of the bed now. No side. No waiting. Just rest. I returned to work. My first pitch meeting back, I presented with confidence I hadn't worn in years. They clapped, not politely, but genuinely. One colleague said, "You're different." In a good way. I smiled. I'm no longer shrinking. I wasn't performing anymore. I was arriving. I started walking in the mornings. At first, to clear my head. Now, because I love the rhythm of forward motion. I pass couples sometimes. And I don't ache. Because not all love leaves wounds. Some just leaves. And mine left space for something honest. Even if it's just solitude, the scar from surgery is still there. I don't hide it. It's proof that I lived through something. Something he couldn't even witness. It's not ugly. It's not shame. It's a line of survival. And when I see it in the mirror, I whisper, "Thank you for not dying for someone who wouldn't show up." Claire no longer appears in mutual circles. She vanished the same way she entered, smiling, silent, calculated. No one asks where she went. That's the thing about replacements. They don't last when they weren't earned. She tried to wear my life. But it didn't fit her for long. Daniel still owns his company, barely. His reputation is recovering, according to LinkedIn. But recovery isn't reinvention. He still smiles in photos, but there's something missing behind the eyes. A confidence that used to come from knowing someone had his back. Now, he only has reflection. And silence. I saw him once at a cafe. He looked surprised. Said, you look great. I said, I do. No questions. No small talk. I left my tea half finished and walked out. Not because I was upset, because I was done. He didn't follow. Of course he didn't. I write again. Not about him. About women who rise. About silence used as strategy. About scars that speak louder than apologies. I don't write for revenge anymore. I write for women who think silence is weakness. It isn't. It's designed out. I started dating, slowly, quietly. No grand gestures. No performances. Just honesty. The first man who opened the door for me, I almost cried. Not because of chivalry. Because I remembered how it felt to be considered. Not tolerated. Not managed. But seen. Some nights, I drink wine alone and read in bed. Not because I'm lonely. Because I finally like my own company. Claire once said, you're too emotional. Daniel once said, you're too intense. I used to shrink to fit their comfort. Now, I expand. My name is still Hart. I chose to keep it. Not because it connects me to him. Because I built a life under that name, and I'm not giving it away. Let him redefine his world. Mine is rooted. And it speaks. Even in silence. Every time I walk past a mirror now, I nod to her, the woman who stayed. Not for him. For me. The one who didn't scream when it shattered. The one who picked up every shard and said, not like this. The one who turned betrayal into blueprint. And silence into salvation. That woman? She's everything now. The last message he sent said, I'll always be sorry. I didn't open it. But I saw the preview. And I smiled. Because regret is a prison. And I don't live there anymore. He does. Alone. I'm not healed. I'm healing. Not perfect. But whole. Not loud. But heard. And that rooftop toast? It wasn't the start of their story. It was the end of mine with him. And the beginning of me, with me.